Howdy folks, OGB here. In this video, I'll be going over my fresh 60 Shockadin and how I'm approaching the gearing process. So, first things first, why don't we take a look at what I've got. So I have the Dreamweave Circlet, Chains of the Lich, Elder Wizard's Mantle, the Caretaker's Cape, which is garbage. I've got my 3-piece Undead Purification, Cord of the Elements, Luminary Kilt, the Entrenching Boots, 2 Lorekeeper's Rings, Rune of Duty, and my Argent Dawn Commission. For my weapon, I have the Arbiter's Blade and the Duskwoven Branch of the Eagle. I picked this up off the auction house because it was cheap. Eagle gear is really great to go after if you just don't have an item for that slot. Other honorable mentions would be like of the Falcon, of the Gorilla, or of the Owl. Or just of Intellect, if you can get your hands on one of those, but they tend to be kind of expensive. So, what was my thought process with the gear here? Essentially, I'm just going for spell power and intellect, and obviously where you can get it, you really want hit. But right now, I don't have any. It is what it is. So this Dreamweave Circlet, I had this crafted. It might be expensive on the auction house, but the materials for it are very, very cheap. If you go and you look at tailoring, you can see it costs some Mage Weave, some Wildvine, Heart of the Wild, Silken Thread, 1 True Silver Bar, and 1 Jade. So I crafted this thing for like 15 gold. It was not expensive at all. Chains of the Lich. This drops off of one of the very first bosses in Stratholme. Really easy to get to. Balzaphon. So you can get that off of him, but also if you're going into Stratholme, there are other good neck options. Balnazar himself has a very nice neck, the Star of Mysteria, 9 stam, 9 int, 1 hit, and some damage and healing. And then Cannon Master also has a neck, the Nacris Shell Necklace. It's similar stats, but crit instead of hit. So those are kind of your other neck options. There's also a helm you can pick up in Stratholme off of Magistrate, the Crimson Felt Hat. Very nice helm, a lot of damage and healing, and just some decent stat spread on there. That's pretty much it for the helm and the neck slots. The Elder Wizard's Mantle. This I just grabbed off the auction house. It was 12 gold. It's a great item, 11 damage and healing, 20 intellect. Not really much else to consider for that slot until you start getting into like raid gear. Caretaker's Cape. So this thing, I mentioned it being garbage earlier. This is going to be one of my first crafted pieces that I go for. So I'll probably craft a Glacial Cloak for the 2% hit. But in the meantime, the other really, really good dungeon to be running is Blackrock Depths. There's a ton of Shockadin gear in there. So even Lord Rockor, this first dude, 2 pairs of shoulders. So I could go try and get these Earth Slags. They're okay, but Elder Wizards is just a better piece in my opinion. Mantle of Lost Hope is also okay, but it doesn't have damage and healing to go with the intellect. Now we have High Interrogator, who drops the Kinetic Amis. This is a little bit better, closer to that Elder Wizard's Mantle. But the Sprite Caster Cape is what we're really after in there. So that's going to be the cloak that I'm going to try to get by just doing my Real runs and going to BRD. Sometimes you have to ask the groups to clear, the High Interrogator, but it's fairly quick. Most groups are willing to do it, in my opinion. And it's pretty much the best pre-raid cape that you're going to get without going for crafted gear. There is some other really nice stuff in there, particularly off Okthor the Breaker, if you can get a group to also do Arena. So the Cyclopean Band is probably one of the best things you can pick up in there, alongside the Banthok Sash. great hit belt with int and damage and healing, but it's harder to get groups to do these. Once you have a decent amount of gear, maybe even this gear right here, you could potentially solo the arena, but I don't really want to recommend that for a fresh 60. Pyromancer has some okay stuff. You could grab some mail leggings out of there. The leggings off of Golem Lord are going to be a little bit better, though. The leather luminary kilt, which is what I'm wearing. He can also drop the Omnicast boots, which are really nice. They have one more hit rating on them again, some stamina, and some nice damage and healing there. Just looking through the other bosses, making sure there's not anything we've overlooked. These are not bad boots, but you really want those Omnicasts. Oh, Ambassador. So this is another really good one. Because trinkets are kind of hard to come by right now, Burst of Knowledge, if you can get your hands on it, is a nice trinket to have. He can also drop, what is it? The Circle of Flame, which is kind of cool. Just an RP item to pick up. Chest of the Seven. This is actually, the Wraith Scythe is not a bad weapon. This is the not the correct stats on it here. These are the old stats. It is 1.4 speed now, I believe. And that actually makes it a nice one-hander to pick up if you didn't grab something like the Arbiter's Blade, which is also from BRD. Let's see which boss drops it. Warder Stilgus. So this is the guy that has the dog with him. He's in front of the Dark Coffer area. And the Arbiter's Blade is really not that great, but it has the stats we're looking for. Royal Scepter is a decent offhand if you don't have a shield. But really a shield is what you want to be looking for. And unfortunately, there are not a ton of really good ones. At least pre-raid, there are not. I think that's pretty much it for BRD. So we were talking about cloaks, moving on to other slots. The chest piece. I would recommend you just farm invasions and get your Breastplate of Undead Purification or one of the other chest plates, and then pick up your bracers and your gloves. The bracers were 5 gold. The gloves were free from just picking up runes off the ground from the dead zombies at the invasions. But if, let's say you don't want to do that, the other cheap option are the Gauntlets of Elements and the Bracers of Elements. You can get those off the auction house. 3 to 4 to 5 gold usually. They're very cheap. But realistically, I think you want to go for the purification stuff, so you have some sanctified gear to start getting ready for Nax. The belt slot. So pretty much Court of Elements here, unless you have the gold to get something crafted. The legs. We kind of already covered a few options there. We can just kind of look through some other dungeons at this point and point out the other notable pieces of loot. So let's take a look at Scholomance this time. And we'll just go through the bosses. We do have some decent bracers here. And a decent cloth waist, actually. The Clutch of Andros. Now, it is not a bad idea to just stack healing gear if that's all you can get your hands on. Just because something doesn't have damage and healing doesn't mean it's not a good item, or at least not a good filler for that slot. This is actually not a bad buckler either. Rattle, this might be one of your better options, to be honest, even though it has no damage and healing. You're still getting that 12 intellect, so I mean that would be better than my Branch of the Eagle, and you can at least put an enchant on it, right? So even that shield is a decent option. There is a ring and some other really nice stuff in here later on. Let's get through these guys. Ra's Frost Whisper, if you're really lucky, you could grab Alana's Embrace. Magister's Mantle is a great shoulder. These are actually decent legs, but once again, healing gear. Spellbound Tome for your offhand if you need it, but again, it's just an intellect piece. Alright, now these mini-bosses don't really have a whole lot, but they do have a ring that they can drop. This is kind of rare. It has 4 int and 6 damage and healing, and a random enchant that will be for some kind of resistance. But if you can pick it up, and you're still using something like Lore Keepers, it's good. Looking through the other stuff. Not really much changes until we get to Gandling. And this is where we have Don Mauricio's band. So this is one of the really nice pre-any raid rings to pick up. Other things you can grab off of this guy are the Wildheart Cowl. It's got 1% hit and 26 damage and healing and 14 intellect. So that is a very nice pre-raid item. One of the best ones you can get. Now, trinkets. What are we going to do about those, right? That's kind of a tough one. But one very easy option is to grab the Dire Maul trinket. So, all we have to do is buy our book for 2 gold and then get someone to let us into the library at Dire Maul. Right, so that's a very easy trinket pickup. What are some other auction house things we can look into here? I wanted to look at my cloak slot. And for that reason, we're going to look up the mats for the Glacial Cloak and see if I can afford them with the little bit of gold that I have left over from buying all my skills, etc. So I need 5 Frozen Runes, 4 Bolts of Rune Cloth, 2 Essence of Water, and 4 Ironweb Spider Silk. All this stuff is pretty easily farmable, except for the Frozen Runes, so we'll spend our gold on that first. 5 Frozen Runes. Alright, we're gonna have to tip our crafter in potions. Or maybe tip him with an arcane crystal. Since I happen to have one from a Real box that I accidentally bought. Okay, let's see if we can find a crafter. Alright, now here we are in Dire Maul, heading down to get my trinket. I got my Glacial Cloak crafted, so that's 2% hit right there. That will be very helpful. And after this, I will go over a couple of other items that you can get. Not necessarily dungeon stuff, but there is some decent stuff you can get from the Argent Dawn. So let's run over here and turn in the quest. The Light and How to Swing It. There's my Royal Seal, free 18 damage and healing. And now we at least have some item level contribution from that slot. Alright, so here we are in EPL. Got another couple of dungeon runs in, picked up a couple of other pieces of gear. Grabbed a Thizadin Sash, Dreadmist Mantle, and a Magister's Mantle, and Ramstein's Lightning Bolts just to fill up that trinket slot. And now what I'm going to do is, since I am revered with the Argent Dawn, I am going to turn in these marks for the superior armaments of battle. So this is going to take care of one of the rings, and also take care of just a nice item level bump and a sanctified piece for my helmet there. And what I did was save up all of my Crypt Fiend parts, my bone fragments, and my Dark Iron scraps from my dungeon runs, and then also sent them over from my main. So I have quite a few of these insignias of the Dawn and the Crusade to spend here, which is nice. So let's get the ring. Let's get the helmet. Put those babies on. And let's check out the revered rewards. So is there anything else we can get? 45 of each. So we're going to be a little short there. And it looks like it would just be a trinket, which we can actually get a better trinket off of the new quest line that's been added from Leonid the Revered. You can either get the new version of Hand of Justice, or you can get the Revered Journal, which is going to add another piece of hit gear to your arsenal. So that's kind of what I would recommend. And since I can't afford those better items, it's time to pick up a supply bag. There we go. Very nice. Now, that is about it. I believe I am pretty much ready to do just about anything pre-raid-wise with this set. There's still some improvements we can make. We still haven't got that Lord Blackwood's Blade out of Scholomance. And, yeah, so a couple other things that I forgot to mention, I think, earlier were also Scholomance items. So one of the things on these mini-bosses that I didn't cover was the Necropile set. This is all stamina, intellect, damage, and healing gear, stuff that you can use for your starter set. So keep an eye out for those if you're doing Skolo. And then, of course, Lord Blackwood for your Prebis weapon. Potential good offhand, either one of these. And yeah, that's about it. Alright, so one final consideration to make for your Fresh 60 Shockadin is your talents. Obviously, you will want 31 in Holy for Holy Shock any way that you can get it. And the main consideration here that you need to make is just whether or not you're going to drop points into Precision. If you don't have the hit gear yet, it's a good idea to just talent Precision and then put everything else in Retribution. You may lose some of your Vindication points, but that's really not the end of the world as a Shockadin. It's more important to have the hit rating. All that said, I hope you found this guide helpful. And once again, OGB out.